You're listening to episode 24 of A Whole New You podcast. On today's show, Lori interviews organic farmers Chris and Jennifer Brenckle. Welcome to A Whole New You podcast. I'm your co-host, Kim Maravich. I'm a registered nurse and author of the book 360 Health. I'm joined by my dear friend, Lori Biddle, a health and wellness coach certified through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Our show exists to inspire and empower women to take charge of their health, with weekly tips and conversation about self-care, mindset, nutrition, fitness, and clean living. Please keep in mind that the material provided in this podcast is intended as general information only and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We're thrilled to have you here. Let's get to the show. Before we get to Lori's interview, I'd like to read a 5-star review that we received through iTunes. This is from Kilpatrick PSU. The title is Super Informative. I love listening every Tuesday during my commute to and from work. This gives great ideas of small changes I can realistically make for a healthier life. Thank you so much for taking the time to leave us a review. Reviews help boost our rankings in iTunes, and they help people find our show who might not already know about it. So if you're listening right now, please go ahead and pause the show and head over to iTunes. You can also subscribe there. And while you're there, leave us a rating and review. If you do, we will be sure to read your review on a future episode. Now let's get to the show.
Hi everyone, it is early May and I am here in my kitchen with local organic farmers Chris and Jennifer Brenckle. And it's pretty rainy here at the beginning of May, pretty soggy out there, which I'm kind of happy about because I would have felt a little guilty bringing them in here for this podcast interview on a beautiful, warm, sunny day because I know how much they have to do to keep that farm up and running and how busy they are, at this time of year. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their farm. Here's Chris.
Thank you, Lori. My name is Chris Brenckle with Brenckle's Organic Farm and Greenhouse. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to so many people who are passionate about good food and healthy living. I'm here with my wife, Jenny, and together we are the next generation who has been working at the farm for quite some time now.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Jenny, Chris's wife. We're not necessarily the next generation. I say our kids are probably the next generation. We have 2 kids who also help us on the farm, along with Chris's parents who are still really heavily involved in the operation of the farm. I guess when you grow up on a farm or marry into a farm, it's just in your blood forever. So we all work together to grow healthy produce for our community.
Yeah, and I know the farm's been in your family a long time, Chris. You wanna give us the story?
Yes. So in 1948, my grandfather, who came from the north side of Pittsburgh, where most German immigrants grew up and farmed, moved to where we are now in 1948 and along Glen Eden Road, just outside Cranberry Township. That was, just to give a reference how long ago that was 2 years before the turnpike came through. And Rochester Road in Cranberry, by the stories I hear, was still a dirt road. And also my grandfather sold his workhorses when he moved to this farm. This is the first farm that he actually used mechanical tractors. When he farmed in the McKnight Road area in the early 40s, he used horses. So this is a new thing for our family. In 1948, we started tractor farming, so to speak, and hauling our produce into Pittsburgh on box trucks. So it would get hauled into the Strip District, which was quite common then because local food was not a marketing ploy. That was just a matter of practice. So today things are very different, obviously. and to get local produce, fresh produce. It can be, I wouldn't say challenging. There's a lot of produce out there, but to get to know your farmer seems like much more of a removed notion than what it did in the 1940s.
I'm so happy to get to know my farmer. I think it's so cool because you're right, Chris. All these years, I just went to my local market and bought whatever they had there, and it's like a total disconnection from where your food's coming from, and it's changed everything for me. Getting to know the farmers and buy locally, and eat this food that's been so well cared for. It's like a whole different energy for you when you're eating this type of food, knowing what's gone into it, and knowing, again, the care and the heart that's been put into producing this food for you. So I would love to hear from you guys, kind of like a day in the life, like kind of behind the scenes, here we are in May, like what's going on in the farm now, and then even moving into June, how does that look, and so on and so forth throughout the summer, because I know there's different crops at different times. And again, when you're buying at the grocery store, you don't really know. There's lettuce at the grocery store all year round, but really June is the time when the lettuce in our area is fantastic, and that's just kind of the awareness we want to create today.
Yeah, so this is May, obviously, and we're working around the rain as usual. That is farming in a nutshell, is working around rain and weather. So right now we have greenhouse sales as well. So we sell organic vegetable plants for people to put in their gardens. So that's kind of what May looks like for us, to prepare the farm for customers to come in, talk to them about gardening, talk to them about growing things for themselves and their families, what kind of products they can use on their produce to feed their families. And also, we have ornamentals, hanging baskets, so, even though people don't eat it, it's exciting to help people with their gardening and what brings them joy in their life. And we've been doing that for quite some time. As we mentioned earlier, I'm a third generation farmer, so the identity of the farm has changed some. So, when I was a child and my father and uncle were steering the ship, so to speak, things were slightly different. So we did mostly wholesale produce and corn. So June was sort of a time when we would take a breath and just wait for the corn to be ready to pick in July and peppers to pick in August, and then we would wholesale those. But since Jenny and I have come back to the farm, we started a CSA program, which really drives the diversity of our farm. So we are sowing spinach and radishes and beets in the field in April. I've already cultivated them 3 times. We've planted lettuce and kohlrabi, those before May even started. Now in May, we're prepping fields, getting fields ready to put out our peppers, tomatoes, well, everything from, vine crops and cukes. So the lettuce will start being picked in June, and we continuously plant that every 2 to 3 weeks throughout the whole summer. We plant a new crop of lettuce, generally every 2 weeks, sometimes 3, again, depending on the weather. And then our main crops, like tomatoes and peppers, we usually plant in May. We may put a second crop of tomatoes in later for canning tomatoes, which really becomes less and less common every year. People, unfortunately, they can less than what they used to. That goes back to the lifestyle and family lifestyle changes. So, that's May for us. A lot of planting, very light on any harvesting. June, still planting. We plant 3 to 4 crops of cucumbers a year. About every 3 to 4 weeks, we plant some cucumbers. to get a fresh crop. And in July is usually when we start picking. July is a heavy harvest season. Tomatoes come in, peppers come in, sweet corn starts coming in. We're digging potatoes. We're full throttle, no doubt, in July. So that's July. And August is usually pretty hot. Well, July and August. So while all that is going on, we're tilling every week. We're irrigating every week. We're planting new crops every 2 weeks. That is really the life of a vegetable farmer. It varies greatly from the quintessential corn and grain farmer that people envision when they talk about the family farm. That you get your corn in and it's knee high by the 4th of July, and then you combine and harvest in the fall, and that's an entirely different way of farming than what produce farmers do, and they both have their own challenges, obviously. But then come September is when we finish our harvesting. A lot of times for your peppers and tomatoes, well, it usually drags into October, but good.
Well, I'll interject. As far as peppers go, those can usually be harvested till frost. When we get closer to the end of the season, we do spend a good bit of time trying to extend the season as much as possible. So that involves, covering crops when possible with floating row cover so that we can get as much produce out of the field as possible. I'll also interject, as far as irrigating, we don't usually use an overhead irrigation system. That's usually drip tape, which is common with most organic farmers.
Yeah, so that part of organic farming is when you're passionate about organic farming, there's a bunch of different reasons why you do it. One is for the health of your environment as well. And so we use practices like drip tape and different types of irrigation that is has less impact on soil. So you do what is best for soil conservation as well. But as far as a day in the life of a farmer, come July, when all those things that we've planted in May and June are ready to be picked, it starts very early. You pick your greens, obviously, before the sun comes up, so they're nice and cool, and they get washed and packed in the house. And as soon as you're done, picking those, and somebody's washing and packing them, you move on. You're picking corn, you're picking peppers, tomatoes, you're packing a truck for market, and then afternoon and evening you get on the tractor and you're cultivating, you're tilling, you're planting more. That's kind of the day in the life of an organic vegetable farmer. It's before sun up till usually after sundown, and if you love it, it's a good way to live, and it's a joyful experience.
You kind of already touched on this a little bit, Chris, but I'd like to dig into a little more about why organic and the benefits of organic. I know that it's more environmentally responsible for sure. And, we also talk a lot on this podcast about all the benefits, going on in your body when you're eating organic. But I last June did a workshop, Eat Real Food, another favorite topic you guys have all heard on this podcast as well. And Chris actually came and spoke to my group, and he had such interesting things to say that I had no idea. We all talk about pesticides, and, we throw that word around like it's such a bad thing. And, he did talk a little bit about the difference between synthetic pesticides, those are the pesticides we don't want. But organic farmers, there is some use of pesticides. They're just different materials. So he's going to talk a little bit about that because I think it's super interesting.
Okay, so organic farming, is a way to verify to your customer the types of practices and the inputs that you use. So to be certified organic, that's what that means. So organic obviously is anything that derives from something natural. So we do use fertilizers, and it's not just, horse manure. There's a lot of products out there on the market, thankfully, actually, since the organic movement has gained some momentum. There's a lot better products. So, there's, for fertilizers, for example, there's like dried out chicken manure that has no risk of any kind of bacteria on the food. So, the customer's not getting food that's had fresh manure anywhere near it. It's just a better, safer practice. It's a better practice for farming it. But as far as pesticides go, there is a misconception that no pesticides are used on organic farming, and that's not the case. There are some things, but they are done in a natural sense. So if you wanted to look at the difference between conventional and organic farming is conventional farming, many times people, you're farming in spite of nature, in spite of the fact that there's weeds, in spite of the fact that there's pests. You farm it and you use products to fix a symptom. But in organic farming, it's much different. So you're farming in the presence of nature. So you're using natural products, many types of neem oil, azaractin, which is another oil derived from a tree oil, pyrithium, which is also derived from actually chrysanthemum plants. So these oils in high concentrations are, can be lethal to the pests that are on your plant, but they only last a day or so in the sun, and they're gone, and they're not harmful to us at all. Many times there's no reentry, which is, after you use a chemical, you have to wait so many hours before you go back into that spot. And most of your organic pesticides, there is no reentry interval. So, it's a very safe product for yourself, your customers, your children, your workers, the environment. And you do have to be wise. You do still have to be careful. You use those products after the sun goes down. If you use them irresponsibly, you do them in the daylight, you run the risk of impacting your bee population. So it's really a matter of responsible farming. And that's really what the local food movement should be about, is getting to know your farmer and how they practice, and are they doing what's best for your family and the community as a whole, really. So yes, those, but the synthetic pesticides, there many times, there's different chemicals that are used. Some are actually systemic pesticides, so they're taken up by the plant, absorbed into the plant. And many times in the case of GMOs, which, by the way, is different than a hybrid, in a GMO, they interject genes from a different plant that make it resistant to a herbicide that then, of course, gets sprayed quite heavily onto that crop because it can be used now. And also, furthermore, they are creating more and more GMOs where the pesticide is interjected into the gene. So the whole plant has the pesticide in it, like BT corn. You never have to spray for worms. You'll never find worms in it because the pesticide is in every cell of that plant, and as soon as the bug attempts to eat it, it is, killed. And we use BT. We use it as a topical pesticide, and our customers never eat it because it's a topical. It gets washed off. It gets washed off when it rains. It gets washed off when you wash it. It gets washed off when we wash it. But when it's in the gene, it's everyone's eating it. So that's a big difference between organic farming and a lot of conventional farming, is that move to continue and the research to continue to try and farm in spite of nature. And every year there's new products being introduced into the market that, in my opinion, are not going towards what the healthiest option is for the customer. It's going to the most marketably viable product. So, in my opinion, I don't look at my produce as a commodity. I look at it as a product from my customer. So, and that's to move into why we grow organically. That's one of the main reasons. We were conventionally farming as I grew up. We were the first generation to make it organic. But when I became an adult and I started looking at different products we could use, and I realized how many different products there were out there and what conventional farmers were possibly using on their crops, and even post-harvest, stored crops. There's chemicals that keep bugs out of your stored crops. So they're applied not just in the field, but throughout the lifespan of that crop. There's a chance of pesticides being used just to get it to the shelf. I realized that seeing that the way I grew up conventionally farming, because we weren't certified organic, was much closer. We were much closer to organic farming than we were the conventional world. So, to make that promise and that confirmation to our customers that we were using the best practices, not just economically, but for their family and their family's health, which is a really big motivation for us to get certified, so people would know exactly how it was that we did our farming practices.
And we appreciate that so much. We're so lucky to have you here in this area because it sounds like you were already doing a lot of these, more trustworthy practices. It's just that certification, I'm sure you have some hoops to jump through to maintain that. But, we totally appreciate it because then we do have more of an understanding of what's happening behind the scenes and just being able to trust that. And it's so special. It makes you guys so unique. And I'm just so honored to have you here in my kitchen today. I can't even tell you. And listening to all of this just gives me even more of a deeper understanding and appreciation. And, Jenny had mentioned a little earlier about CSAs and how that's diversified your crops and all of that. But not everybody knows what a CSA is. So I want to make sure we spend some time kind of talking through what that stands for, what that means, kind of how the process works, to the end user.
So a CSA is a vegetable subscription program. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. So it's a way for the community to get involved and really play a bigger role in the farming community in their area. So farming requires a lot of upfront investment when there's not a lot of income coming in. So say in January, that's when we are making all of our investments in our seed and our fertilizer and manpower to start sowing seeds, in heating costs of greenhouses. So a CSA allows a customer to sign up in January and make a payment and make a commitment to get their produce from our farm later in the year. And that helps us offset the risk involved in farming. So our CSA is a 23-week program. That's a pretty standard time frame for most farms in our area. Our program starts in mid-June and runs through mid-November. And what happens is the customer signs up and they make a commitment to our farm, and in return, we make a commitment to them that we will provide fresh, local, in our case, organic produce to them and their family on a weekly basis throughout the growing season. And it includes in-season produce. And so that has really forced us to diversify, as Chris mentioned before, so that we are able to provide our CSA members with a nice variety of produce. We really try our best, but sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate and you have a bumper crop of cabbage and maybe not so great of a crop of tomatoes, but our customers understand that when they sign up. So it's just a way for the community to be involved with the farm and know their farmer, know their farmer's growing practices, and also to expand on the food that they eat. We find that a lot of our CSA members, especially those that this is their first year trying out a CSA, they come back and they say, oh, it's really forced me to try new things, and I didn't even know what kohlrabi was, and now I love it, and I wish that you would put more in my share every week. But it really does expand people's horizons as far as what they eat in their diet.
And as a participant of a CSA, I agree with that 100%. And my children, they're trying new things because it's a whole experience, like they see what's in the box and they're like, oh, what's that? And, you kind of tell them about it and they try it. And if you have never bought produce from a local farmer, especially a local organic farmer, or you've never participated in a CSA, I highly recommend it. Guys, food from the grocery store does not taste like this. It is a whole nother experience. And sometimes vegetables that you think that you don't like I'll say beets, or have never really been my favorite, but eating local, organic dirt beets has been like a whole different ballgame for me. I've actually really grown to love them. Everything tastes so much better. And it's so much better for your body to kind of eat in the rhythms of what is growing around you and what season that you're in. So there's a lot of health benefits there as well, in addition to all of the vitamins and nutrients and, all that great nourishment that you're getting from those fruits and vegetables. And you'll see you really, really enjoy it because it just tastes so good and so fresh. And I highly, highly recommend that experience. So if you don't live locally, I would definitely do some research, get on a Google search and see, who in your area is doing CSAs, and also really look into the organic aspect, because as we talked about here today, that's very important as well. Now, real quickly here, before we kind of start to wrap this up, I also know that Brenckle's farm visits a lot of different farm markets. So you don't have to participate in the CSA in order to take advantage of what they offer. And you guys also sell directly from your farm as well too, right? So lots of opportunity to take advantage of all this good stuff they're doing there. Would you like to talk about your locations?
Yeah, so exactly. And a CSA, especially depending on people's lifestyle, it may not fit everyone's lifestyle. And that's important. You need to do things that fit your lifestyle. If healthy eating is more work, then people aren't going to do it. So, don't fight your lifestyle. Just work the healthy food into it. There's a bunch of farmers markets we go to. In this area, Pittsburgh, there's a lot of farmers markets. Mondays we go to East Liberty. It's in a new park right by the fire hall. The firehouse, I guess they're not volunteers. So the firehouse in East Liberty. And Thursday we're at Market Square. So if you're downtown and you go to Market Square for lunch on Thursdays, there's a farmers market there. There's a lot of great produce. Brenckle's Organic, we're down there. Friday on the north side, right outside Allegheny hospital as Allegheny General. We're in the park there. Saturday, we're at Sewickley at St. James parking lot, and also out in Ligonier. We go to Ligonier Country Market. And Sundays, we're excited this year. We got into the Squirrel Hill Farmers Market on Sundays. If you're in Pittsburgh or in Squirrel Hill area, it's a great market. And we are very blessed to have a lot of great markets. Almost every market we go to, it's not just, produce, and, you can walk out of there with everything you need from, vegetables and bread and meat and eggs and dairy. We're very fortunate in this area. One of the only challenges is reaching our customers and reaching them in where they are in their lifestyle and being accessible to them. So, and thank you for this opportunity to talk about, what we do as farmers.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here, again, in the midst of your busy season. But I thought the timing was great. This is going to air in June. And, we just want to get everyone excited for what is available to you these next few months. So definitely make sure you take some time and look into what's available in your area and take full advantage. You will not regret it. It's so good. Oh, my goodness. Delicious. Anything else you guys want to say in closing? All right. Oh, yes. We're also going to just throw out there, and I can put this in the show notes as well, where to find them here in Cranberry.
We're at 768 Glen Eden Road. We are just, our property borders Cranberry Township, so we're like a mile away from the Cranberry Golf Course. We're very accessible, so.
And I, as a side note, will be going there to get all my flowers because I have been seeing the stuff they've been posting on Instagram, and they are just gorgeous. So in addition to all the beautiful fruits and veggies and produce that they provide, they also have gorgeous flowers. So it's a great time of year for that as well. So stop in and check them out. Thanks for listening.
That's it for today. For more from Kim, you can go to kimmarovich.com. For more from Lori, go to simplympoweredllc.com. We're always open to listener questions or suggestions for the show. You can email those to contact@awholenewyou.podcast.com. We'd also love it if you joined our Facebook community and followed us on Instagram. Just search for A Whole New You Podcast. And lastly, if you'd be so kind as to leave us a rating and review in iTunes, we would really appreciate that so more people can find our show and join our community. We'll see you next week.